Recognition, power, and influence is your birthright, and this podcast shows you how to get there. Welcome to episode number 280. I actually had to pinch myself because I didn't believe that this was episode 280. I think I started to say 260, and I was like, where did all the podcast episodes go? I've been cranking out podcast episodes for, gosh, it has to be now like 6 years. And I am so excited, really, truly, to bring you over 280 podcast episodes to help you get the recognition, power, and influence that you already deserve. In today's episode, I'm talking about the loyalty factor. And if you're somebody who has been loyal to your organization for your entire career, probably to a fault, I want to show you how you can begin to lift your head up, look outside of your organization, and use that to your advantage, even if you plan on continuing to be loyal to your company for the next 20 years. It gives you security when and if you are laid off. And it also shows you and sets you up for success internally and externally. So today's episode's all about loyalty. I am loyal to you as my listeners to get you the recognition that you deserve. And I want to encourage you to break free from the concept of loyalty to actually begin to make a bigger impact, whether you remain loyal to a single company or multiple companies throughout the rest of your career. All right, let's get started. Welcome to Women Changing Leadership. I am your host, Stacy Mayer, and I teach you how to get promoted, get paid, and bring your whole self to the leadership table. I am on a mission to change organizations from the C-suite out because women are the new face of leadership, and we are doing it on our terms. Hello, corporate badasses. Welcome to another episode of Women Changing Leadership. I am your host, Stacy Mayer, and super excited, as always, to be here with you again this week. Today's episode, I am sharing with you my take on loyalty and being loyal to your organization. And I'm laughing because we all know how that works out in the end. I've been thinking about this a lot lately, specifically because like my brother, he's been at the same organization for almost 2 decades. And, you know, me and my husband are not that way. Well, my husband has switched industries and switched organizations multiple times in his career. And I have moved and switched. I actually started my coaching business is, I would say, like my third career path in my life. So I am used to making change as much as I'm uncomfortable with change. I'm not compelled to be loyal. That's not like a go-to value of mine, but I recognize that that is a go-to value for many of you. And if you're somebody who has ever been loyal to a fault, this episode is for you. Or if you're somebody who's like me and you're not necessarily loyal per se, but you want to further understand how even that aspect of being non-loyal might also be getting in your way. So I want to give you a little bit of personal background on me and also, just share some more about my life. And when I think of loyalty, the first thing that I think of is relationships. So like I think about my husband, my marriage. I definitely believe in monogamy. I'm happily married to my husband. I believe in being very loyal to him. But the difference between, I keep laughing, being loyal to my husband and being loyal to an organization is stark. Like it's huge, huge, huge difference, right? And, one of the things that I think about with my husband is that, one, I met him later in life, and this is going to come around. You're going to see here in a minute how this applies to your job. We started dating in my late 30s. I kind of knew what I was looking for. He did as well. So We had a different mindset when we were approaching our relationship. And then obviously, our relationship is very mutually beneficial. So he supports me, I support him, and we're both in this life, this world that we're working on together. But for those of you who have experienced less than stellar relationships in your life, and I think about my mother who got divorced when I was 6 years old. And, when I look back at that relationship, I'm like, yes, made sense. They should have gotten divorced. And I'm thankful that they did. And she took control and she took matters into her own hands. She didn't have resources, but she knew what she needed. And then fast forward to her professional career, and she actually stayed at the same organization for pretty much her entire professional career. So she was a stay-at-home mom when she got divorced. So she had to go get her first job. I think she had had a small job in high school, and then now she has to go get her first job. And she also did not have a college degree. And I grew up in Kentucky, so there are limited resources in terms of where you can work. So I think the first place that she applied was UPS. So there's a big hub in Louisville, Kentucky, and you probably get a lot of Amazon packages from there. So it was sort of the obvious thing to do. And then she went off to work for a Fortune 500 health insurance company for the rest of her career. And she worked her way all the way up to director. I'm incredibly proud of her and the career that she created for herself at this organization. But I do remember hearing from her very early on, and I felt this tinge of sadness, knowing that I'm somebody who doesn't feel tied down pretty much by anything. I'm like, we can find a way out of this and use it to our advantage to have success, whatever that might be. And so for her, I do remember feeling like she felt somewhat tied to that particular organization. So it might have been because she didn't have a college degree. It might have been because that was the only place that she had built relationships over the years. And I always felt like that was, in my opinion, it felt a little sad. It felt limiting. I wanted her to have choices. I wanted her to feel like she had choices. And there were many moments at this particular organization where she was recognized, both financially and with titles and promotions. And then there were equally the same number of moments at the same organization where she wasn't appreciated or recognized. And so you're going to find yourself in that same flow, that ups and downs, internally in your organization and also externally. So if you switch organizations very frequently, you're going to find yourself in that same boat where you're going to have situations where you feel adequately recognized and compensated. And then you're going to have situations where you feel like you're not included and you're struggling. And then you have to figure out what to do instead. My solution for all of this, everything, and I share this with you as my point of view. And if you are loyal to your organization, then I am so, so happy for you. And I'm not saying that you have to quit your organization. So bear with me here. If you've been at your company for more than 20 years, that's great. You are amazing. And I'm very, 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 very proud of you. But I would love for you to start to entertain this possibility of not being loyal and what that would look like. So I actually think that it is easier for my clients who never really had the loyalty complex to understand how to have success, to get recognized, to build their careers, because they are forced into this model of having to start over at multiple different companies, or people who have switched industries or switched subject matter expertise later in life. So they're sort of used to having to, and I definitely don't think we're ever starting over, but they're used to advocating for themselves, right? So if you start at a new place, then everything is fresh. Like even your resume, I have so many clients that start working with me after being at the same organization for 20 years. And unfortunately, half of those so many clients who work with me also got laid off from that organization after having worked there for 20 years. So we know that that isn't job security to stay at the same organization. So why are we staying? And I can't speak for my mother specifically, but most of it is because we just don't know what our other options are. We just don't know if it would be possible to get a job somewhere else, especially at the level that she was getting paid and her title, without a college degree. So would she have to go backwards so far that it wasn't even worth it to start again? But you're somebody who might be making that decision just because you don't know what else is out there. You might be staying loyal to your organization just because it's work from home, the benefits. Again, maybe that just comes down to I don't know what else is out there. I don't know where else I could do the work that I'm currently doing that I enjoy, that I love at another organization. And I don't know if I could work from home, if I could have the same freedom, all of the unknowns. You also don't know how much more money you could be making at another organization. You also don't know what kind of influence and impact you could be making at another organization. But I'm not going to spend a ton of time on there. But I just want to remind you that if you don't know if you would lose out on the negatives, what is the other side of that coin is you also don't know what's possible unless you start exploring it. And so I'm spending today's episode to just remind you, if you're somebody who is from a values standpoint, and also rightfully so, you have fear and you don't know what else is out there and you don't know what it's going to be like on the other side. I want to encourage you to start exploring what it would be like to not be loyal, at your organization. I get asked by my clients what it looks like on their resume when they leave companies every 1 or 2 years. And pretty much across the board, my answer is like nothing. It actually doesn't look like anything. We know that people are leaving their organizations every couple of years. And when I help people on interview strategies, I am often just talking to them about how to package that story. Like, why did you leave? Where were you headed? What growth were you going to experience at the new organization? And how did you set up the previous organization so that they were better off because you were there? Your leadership, whether it was 1 year or 5 years, you need to be able to explain the impact that you had at that organization. So these are great skills to have. And typically speaking, I really don't see it affect my clients. What I do see affect my clients is loyalty. When a person on their resume has been in an organization for 20 years, and I know this is true because I have the clients who are now unemployed, who are looking for opportunities, and they've been at the same company for 20 plus years, and they can't figure out how to spin it. Because why did I stay at that company for so long? How did I grow at that organization? What was the impact I was making over 20 plus years? And why, after 20 plus years of loyalty to this organization, did they still lay me off? Now, please don't take this as a negative, because I don't see it that way. And I help them figure out how to tell a better story. But this is the story that's in their heads. And it's also the story that infiltrates their interviews. And I'm just going to give you a quick tip here. If you're somebody who's been at your organization for 20 plus years and you're now finding yourself out on the job circuit and you're trying to explain your growth and what you've done and the work and the impact you've made over the last 20 plus years, think of it as 5 different jobs that you had. So both on your resume as well as in the interview process, you really want to space out that time and put it into mile markers. So really spend the time to think of it as multiple jobs that you've held, almost as if they were 5 different companies, and how you would explain that. So that's just my side note, quick tip. Take that away, because I know that if you're still listening to this podcast, you might actually be somebody who has to justify their employment for the last 20 years at one particular organization. You don't want to think of it as just one big mesh of time. Anyway, so I want to encourage you, even if, and I'm not saying that you're actually going to leave your company. Let me get this clear, but I want you to encourage you to entertain the possibility of leaving your company. So what does that mean, to entertain the possibility of leaving your company? First of all, you got to wake up and deliberately manage your career, which is the number one way that I always tell women, if you want to get promoted, start deliberately managing your career today, because most likely you're not. You're doing your job well, hoping that you'll be promoted. So it forces you to start deliberately managing your career. You get up from your desk, you pull yourself out of the weeds, and you start to think about what else is out there. If I were to leave, where would I go? Now, it's probably going to make you sick to your stomach at first, and you're going to be like, oh, I don't even want to deal with this. I just want to do my job, and I'm not even planning on leaving anyway, right, Stacy? Yes, exactly. I'm saying you don't have to leave, but I want you to pick your head up and entertain the possibility of leaving your organization. Even just doing this exercise once a year is going to make you better off when and if you do get laid off by the same organization someday. Like, pick your head up, start thinking about what if I were to leave this organization? What would I do instead? Where would I go? What impact would I want to make? What roles would I apply for? Just start thinking about it. Start researching other organizations. Now you can take it one step further. You can even update your resume. You can also update your LinkedIn profile. Note, you can set your changes to private so that nobody actually even notices that you even updated your LinkedIn profile. So you can go in there. I know so many of you, if you've been at the same company for 20 plus years and you haven't had to look for a job, I guarantee your LinkedIn profile is out of date. So start making those updates and use the suggestion that I had, which is you're going to split your current organization, your current company up into buckets so that it looks like you had 5 different jobs over the last 20 plus years. All right. So it forces you to get your assets in order, to start thinking about, to research, to just ponder, and then you go back to work and you just do your job, do your job, do your job. Now, the really cool thing is if you take it even one more step further, which is actually applying for jobs or entertaining recruiter phone calls, again, you can do all of this without leaving your current job. Remember, you can take interviews with zero intention of leaving your current company. So many of you are waiting until you need the job. The worst thing you can do is wait to start interviewing when you need the job. You're bringing that level of desperation and neediness and clinginess and fear, all of that into the interview process. So I'm helping you practice interviewing, which is hard enough as it is, when you don't actually need a job. Isn't that great? So you're going to start to interview. Now, what happens when you start to interview? You're spending even more time deliberately managing your career. So at your current company, it's possible that you haven't entertained all possibilities of growth at your current organization. I have one client right now who told me just the other day, she said, Stacy, you are the only reason I am still here at this company. Of course, the work that we're doing is we're exploring external opportunities. She's interviewing for jobs. I mean, she had to start with wrapping her brain around it, then actually updating her assets, and then going out and interviewing for jobs. But while she was doing that, she started asking for what she wanted at work. And she's created so many incredible opportunities for herself internally that she's actually enjoying the work that she's doing at work more. Or she at least has the pathway for the next 5 years to enjoy the work that she's doing at work more. She's been focusing on building those relationships internally. Because the truth is, if you can make it work at your current organization from a truly technical perspective, it's actually easier. So, with my mom, the reason that she had success is because she had these relationships, right? She was proactively building relationships with her boss and with her peers and everything along the way at her company, not outside her company, but internally. And she grew. Like, that's how it works. And so if you can go to those relationships that you've already cultivated and you've built a bond with, and you can turn those into opportunities at your current company, that's amazing. It's typically actually easier to do. But the problem is that we're not proactively doing it. So I want you to think about this idea, even just like planting that seed of no longer being loyal to your current company, and what types of possibilities that would open up for you internally, like to stay at your current company. So it's a full circle. You entertain the possibility of not being loyal to your company so that you can actually stay loyal to your company. Even if you're going to start having more proactive promotion conversations, let's say just with your boss, you can remind your boss that you want to stay loyal to this organization, that you want to be at this organization until retirement. Now, saying that you want to be at this organization until retirement doesn't mean you have to. You can still be applying externally. And if your boss is like, we're never going to promote you, or just sit tight for another 20 years, and you do decide to take a job, well, now you're in even more integrity when you leave your organization because you've done both. You have given your boss a chance to promote you. She decided not to do it. So then when you do leave for another company or a competitor, then you are giving her the benefit of the doubt. You know, she's like, yeah, I knew that she wanted more and I couldn't give it to her. So, you know, I'm happy for her, right? Or maybe not happy for her, but, you know, whatever. It's indifference. And that's the funny thing about loyalty is that typically speaking, and I want to remind you that loyalty in marriage and in other relationships in your life is very different than loyalty to an organization. The only loyalty that that organization has is to their bottom line. This is why layoffs even exist. And so at the point that they need to make money to stay alive, then they're going to do it. They're not loyal to you specifically. Nobody's ever loyal to you. And the only thing you get to walk away with, I'm sorry to be grim, is your like 5-year pen that you got in your 20-year, I don't know what they give you, like gift card after 20 years of service. So today's episode is a little bit of a wake-up call, and also to give you permission, even if you're still going to be loyal to your organization, to start to explore external opportunities because of the benefits and the increase in the impact that you can make at your current organization. All right, my friends, if you have a friend or a colleague who has been way too loyal, and I mean, I can name 5 that I should send this podcast episode to, I want you to do that. Please forward the podcast, put it on your LinkedIn, share with other people this possibility, because this single attitudinal change could be exactly what they need to hear to boost themselves to that next level of confidence. So I look forward to seeing your shares. Also review us on Apple iTunes so that more people can be impacted by this podcast and this messaging, because it needs to be shared. We need more women like you at the leadership table, and this podcast helps you get there. All right. Thank you all so much for listening, and I'll see you next week. Bye. Before you go, I have a question for you. Do you know how close you are to your next promotion? Really? Not what your boss has told you, not what you even believe to be true, but have you actually taken the time to sit down, take an assessment, review the 5 categories that it takes to get promoted into senior executive leadership positions, and decided where you fall in each category, and given yourself a ranking on a scale of 1 to 10 of how close you are to getting your next promotion? Have you done this? Well, now's your chance. If that feels interesting to you and you're like, hey, I want to know exactly how close I might actually be, or how far away you might be, and what it's going to take to get you even closer, then I invite you to take my promotability quiz. This is a quiz that I put together with practical tips that actually tell you where you're lacking and where you're winning. What are the areas that you actually need to improve, and not necessarily what your boss is telling you all the time, so that you can take concrete steps towards landing that next promotion and changing the face of the leadership table. Go to yourpromotabilityscore.com to take your free assessment today.